Welcome back to True Crime Pulse. In today's gripping case, we dive into the mysterious and intense manhunt for Geovanni Otero, wanted for the brutal murder of a Philadelphia woman. Otero's escape has captured national attention, and authorities are working around the clock to bring him to justice. But who helped him? What challenges are law enforcement facing in tracking him down? And how long can he stay hidden? In this video, we'll break down the details of Otero's escape, the shocking crime, and the search that's turning into an international pursuit. As we dig deeper into the case, we'll explore the emotional toll on the victim's family and the tireless efforts of investigators. Geovanni Otero, 29, is currently Philadelphia's most wanted man, accused of the brutal murder of his ex-girlfriend, Melody Rivera. The horrific crime came to light on November 7th, when park visitors discovered a shallow grave in a wooded area. Hidden beneath a layer of twigs and weeds was the lifeless body of 29-year-old Melody, who had been reported missing about a week earlier. Investigators now believe she was killed on November 1st, days before her body was found. According to police, Melody was last seen alive on Halloween while driving with a friend. Their night took a terrifying turn when Otero allegedly ambushed the pair, forcing Melody's friend out of the vehicle before speeding off with her. Despite desperate search efforts, the car was discovered abandoned days later, deepening fears that something terrible had happened. Detectives quickly focused on Otero as a person of interest after learning he and Melody had been involved in a volatile relationship marked by harassment and threats. Her family told the Philadelphia Inquirer that Otero had been sending threatening messages and following her in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Despite their concerns, no restraining order had been filed before the tragedy occurred. The investigation took a grim turn when Melody's body was found. The medical examiner examined that Melody had been bludgeoned to death, ruling her death a homicide caused by severe blunt force trauma. What initially started as a missing persons case evolved into a murder investigation, prompting police to issue a warrant for Otero's arrest. Authorities believe the killing was fueled by escalating domestic violence, a tragic pattern often seen in such cases. Otero, however, was nowhere to be found. Police soon discovered that he had failed to check in with his parole officer and had effectively vanished. His criminal record, stretching back to his early teens, painted a troubling picture of a life marked by violence and crime. In 2015, Otero served time on drug and gun charges. 3 years later, he was convicted of illegal gun possession and sentenced to 3.5 to 8 years in prison. He had only recently been released before Melody's murder. Desperate to locate him, the U.S. Marshals joined the search, offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. Officials warned the public that Otero, who also goes by the alias Gozer, should be considered dangerous. He is described as having black hair, brown eyes, tattoos covering both hands, and a distinctive dagger tattoo behind his left ear. For Melody's grieving family, the nightmare is far from over. Her loved ones must now navigate life without her, while her 11-year-old son faces a future without his mother's care and support. Though they have been able to lay her to rest, the family's only hope for closure now lies in seeing her accused killer brought to justice. She didn't deserve this, Melody's sister, Martha Fred, told local station WBVI, especially by someone who supposedly loved her. Considering the circumstances, it seems plausible he was trying to buy himself some time. The shallow grave, hastily covered with twigs and weeds, suggests desperation rather than premeditation. He likely didn't have the proper tools to dig a deeper grave, which indicates that concealing the body was a rushed attempt to create distance between himself and the crime scene. While it's unsettling to call it a burial, his actions seem driven by panic rather than planning. Detectives suspect Geovanni Otero, Philadelphia's most wanted man's behavior, speaks volumes. The fact that he abruptly cut off contact with his parole officer and vanished without a trace strongly points to guilt. These are classic signs of someone trying to evade justice. Fleeing isn't just about avoiding arrest, it's a psychological response rooted in the fear of consequences. Otero's disappearance clearly indicates he knew he would be the prime suspect and wanted to stay ahead of law enforcement. Tracking down a fugitive like Otero, who has been on the run for over a month, is no easy task. Where does the search go from here? When someone has been missing this long, investigators typically focus on tracing known associates, family members, and anyone who might be helping him. Even fugitives with limited resources rarely survive alone for extended periods. Someone could be providing shelter, transportation, or financial support. Investigators will be following these leads closely, checking surveillance footage near suspected locations, and interviewing potential accomplices. Critical technology like cell phone data, social media monitoring, and video surveillance is essential. Cell phone data, GPS tracking, and tower pings are some of the most powerful tools in modern investigations. These technologies allow law enforcement to establish a suspect's movements and potential hiding places. Additionally, in today's world, video surveillance is nearly everywhere, from street cameras to private doorbell cams like Ring. These devices can capture critical footage, helping to track movements or even identify getaway vehicles. The U.S. Marshals and the Philadelphia Police Department are using every technological tool at their disposal. They likely have dedicated teams analyzing social media accounts, phone records, and surveillance footage around the clock, searching for any digital breadcrumbs Otero might have left behind. While technology has revolutionized law enforcement, investigations remain complex and time-consuming. Surveillance footage must be reviewed, timestamps verified, and locations cross-referenced with cell tower data. Even when police know where a suspect was, determining where they went next involves analyzing hours of video, checking traffic cameras, and tracing vehicle records. Additionally, investigators must coordinate with multiple agencies, including local police, federal law enforcement, and even international organizations if they suspect the fugitive has crossed borders. Every potential lead requires verification to avoid false assumptions that could derail the investigation. It's a painstaking process, but thoroughness ensures a stronger case if and when the suspect is caught and brought to trial. Ultimately, while technology provides powerful tools, successful investigations still rely on human expertise, persistence, and sometimes even a bit of luck. There is also a strong possibility that the suspect has remained in the Philadelphia area or nearby. If that's the case, surviving without detection would likely require outside assistance. It's worth noting that law enforcement promptly issued a parole violation warrant after the suspect fled, giving police immediate grounds to detain him if encountered, even before securing a formal murder warrant. This legal tool acts as an essential mechanism in multi-jurisdictional investigations, alerting officers across various agencies that the suspect is a person of interest and should be held if found. If officers pull over a vehicle, they may not know who is inside, but the parole violation warrant ensures they can legally detain the suspect on site, buying law enforcement time to solidify their murder case. Complicating matters further is the suspect's extensive criminal history, reportedly stretching back to age 12. His background likely gives him some understanding of how law enforcement operates, possibly helping him anticipate police tactics. However, his past also limits his ability to move freely in society, especially given his distinctive tattoos covering much of his body. While these tattoos make him easily recognizable, they also suggest he has lived a life where blending in was never a priority, perhaps indicating a history of relying on underground networks or criminal associates for survival. His experience with the justice system means he might be using tactics he learned either in prison or on the streets to stay ahead of the search. To encourage tips from the public, the U.S. Marshals have issued a $5,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. While this amount might not sway close family members or loyal friends, it could motivate casual acquaintances or distant associates who have less personal loyalty. Even those currently aiding him might reconsider if they realize the gravity of his crime and the legal risks they face for assisting a fugitive. Helping someone capable of committing such a brutal crime could have severe consequences not just legally, but also personally, given the unpredictability of someone driven to such violence. There's also the concerning possibility that the suspect, feeling increasingly cornered, could lash out in desperation. History shows that fugitives often commit additional crimes while on the run, especially if they believe law enforcement is closing in. He might resort to carjacking, robbery, or other violent acts to secure resources or facilitate an escape. While authorities have not publicly linked the suspect to firearm possession, the nature of the initial crime suggests he is highly dangerous, regardless of weapon access. Law enforcement is fully committed to capturing him, using every technological and investigative tool at their disposal. The search is relentless. It's not a question of if he will be caught, but when and where. Geovanni Otero could easily find a firearm if he wanted to. Guns are unfortunately not too difficult to come by, especially in certain areas. But as it stands right now, it appears that he did not have a gun at the time of the crime. So could a shootout or violent confrontation happen when authorities eventually catch up with him? It's definitely a possibility. Given the circumstances and the danger surrounding someone like him, the risk of a standoff could certainly come into play. Otero is considered dangerous, and if he's backed into a corner, there's no telling what his next move will be. Investigators believe he is getting help underground. Helping a fugitive is no small crime. Anyone caught aiding Otero in his escape could face felony charges, and the severity of those charges can depend on a variety of factors. The prosecution will need to prove that these individuals knew exactly what they were doing, that they knew he was wanted for a serious crime, and that they intentionally assisted him in evading capture. This case is so highly publicized at this point, it's on news outlets, social media, and all over law enforcement channels that it would be nearly impossible for anyone involved to claim they didn't know what was going on. With the U.S. Marshal Service actively tracking down Otero and the FBI putting out notices, the chances of someone being completely unaware are slim. But the bottom line is that anyone caught helping him will likely face harsh felony charges. Whether it's providing him with a safe house, giving him money, or even something as simple as bringing him food, these acts of aid are serious offenses, and the people involved will have to answer for them. The federal authorities are involved at this point. The federal warrant for his arrest is valid throughout the United States, so any state police department can detain him if they come across him. But as for if the case crosses into federal jurisdiction, that depends. In many cases, crossing state lines in and of itself doesn't automatically result in federal charges unless certain factors come into play. For example, if someone takes a victim across state lines, or if the crime involves federal issues such as kidnapping or trafficking, then it could be elevated to federal charges. But Otero's murder warrant is valid nationwide. So if he's apprehended in another state, it's a matter of coordinating with local authorities and ensuring that he is extradited to the appropriate jurisdiction to face charges. Also, if found outside the country, depending on the nature of the case, some warrants do have international reach, and extradition could come into play, though that process can be more complicated. In any case, his status as a wanted fugitive is clear, and law enforcement will continue to track his whereabouts, regardless of location. The federal government and local authorities will work together to ensure that if he's found, justice is served. Speaking of justice, the victim's family is obviously waiting anxiously for news. For those of us in law enforcement, talking to the family members of victims is often one of the most difficult parts of the job. It's gut-wrenching to hear the pain in their voices when they plead for answers. Their lives have been irrevocably altered by this crime, and each day they go without justice feels like an eternity. Family members often express how time seems to drag on when they are waiting for an arrest, especially when they feel like no progress is being made. A day for them feels like a year, and I can only imagine how unbearable that must be. When we speak to victims' families, it's essential to offer empathy and support. At the same time, we must do everything we can to provide them with the answers they so desperately need. That might sound like a simple thing, but it's not. The word closure is often used, but in reality, it doesn't always seem to capture what the family is actually seeking. For them, closure might not truly exist, because nothing will bring their loved one back. Instead, they are looking for justice, a sense that the person who caused this immense pain will be held accountable. As homicide investigators, our job isn't to provide closure, but to make sure that justice is done. We work tirelessly to find the offender, bring them to trial, and ensure they are held responsible for their actions. That's the best we can do for the victim's family, though it will never make up for the loss they've experienced. But the goal is to help them heal, to bring them the peace of knowing that the perpetrator will face the consequences of their actions. Now, when it comes to Otero's capture, there's no way to predict exactly when it will happen, but we know that the clock is ticking. Authorities will need a break-a-tip, some kind of information that leads them to him. The money being offered as a reward for information is certainly a tool that can help. People who may have seen something or heard something but didn't want to come forward before may now feel compelled to do so because of the financial incentive. As the days go by, Otero will likely become more desperate. He may have changed his appearance or tried to alter his identity in some way, but there are still people who will recognize him. The longer he stays on the run, the more difficult it will be for him to remain hidden. And if he tries to flee the country? That's where it gets complicated. The authorities are going to track him, and the news coverage will only tighten the noose around him. The further away he gets, the more he will be forced into corners where people might not want him around anymore. So it's just a matter of time. Someone will see him or hear something that leads to his capture. They will get him. The city of Philadelphia has even put up a $20,000 reward for anyone who has information that leads to Geovanni Otero's arrest and conviction. Authorities have been very clear that they consider him to be armed and dangerous, and they're urging anyone with information to come forward. His arrest is just a matter of time now. After weeks of intense searching and with the relentless pursuit of law enforcement, the hunt for Geovanni Otero continues, leaving the question of when not if he will be caught. With the help of social media, tips from the public, and the ongoing efforts of the U.S. Marshals and local police, the noose is tightening around him. As authorities work tirelessly to bring justice to the victim and her grieving family, it's clear that Otero can only run for so long. The case remains open, and the city of Philadelphia continues to offer a reward for information that leads to his capture. For the family of the victim, the hope of closure is still alive, but they know that it's a long road ahead. While the manhunt rages on, one thing is certain: the pursuit of justice never stops, and the authorities won't rest until Otero is off the streets and held accountable for his actions. If you have any information that could help with the case, authorities urge you to come forward. The victim's family and the entire community deserve answers, and with your help, they might finally get them. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime updates. We'll continue to keep you informed as the story develops. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.